Welcome to my review of R-Type Delta for the PlayStation 1. And yeah, in the beginning you can choose which ship you want. And the ships do make a pretty big difference. You have different special attacks attached to your ships. And the anchors behave differently as well. So it's pretty cool. It gives you a nice variety. You can also switch your ship speed on the fly. I believe using one of the bumpers, which is great because, for certain situations you don't want that super twitchy control. Sometimes you just want your ship to move a little bit slower so you can get more accurate movements. So you may find yourself swapping between ship speeds, quite frequently, depending on the situation. And yeah, this game, I remember when I got this game back in the day and really enjoyed it. Never was able to beat it. I got very far back then. Now, since I have beat it since. I beat it fairly recently. And I have a tutorial of the game up on the channel, which I'll link in the description. But yeah, the level design is awesome. You got these cities. You got a nice variety. You have like water levels, with water in the background and biological type of enemies. A real variety of different enemy types like you usually get in the R-Type games. The only difference with this game and the other R-Type games really is that the visual style is based around polygons. It still maintains the 2D playing style of all the other games, but because the visuals are in 3D, it kind of helps the game in some ways and hurts it in other ways. In some ways it's cool because it's a different look for the series, so I thought it was cool. And at the time it was awesome because it was just cool to see the PlayStation doing some cool shit on screen, with some 3D polygons and shit. That was all new back then, so it was pretty fucking awesome back then. And having the CD quality music, these were all big deals. And the music sounds awesome as well. Though I prefer the cleaner look of the other R-Type games, the pixel art style, like R-Type 3 and R-Type Leo for arcade and all the different, pixel style R-Type games. But I still really enjoyed the look of this game. The one downside to this polygon style in a 2D type of game, and an older polygon style, I should say, because, newer games don't have this problem now with the way graphics are, but the graphics can be pretty pixelated with the polygons, and it can make for a very, busy screen where it's hard to see bullets and shit like that in some areas. And you will get killed because of that. So that is one area that definitely takes it down from the other games in the series. Because you don't want to die because of shit in the particles in the background that you thought were a bullet or something like that. Bullets kind of camouflage into the background in a lot of parts. So, especially with some areas where the hit detection is a little bit off on some of the, you'll have like rotating pieces of debris that you have to dodge, and sometimes you think you have a clean, you can fit in cleanly, but you die. So it's like, it's not always obvious where you can fit when you're trying to squeeze in. So the polygons do make it a little bit confusing at times. For the most part, it's pretty fucking straightforward, obviously. But occasionally you're going to get hit, and you're not going to feel like it was warranted, But there's a cool variety. Like in this stage, this huge mech is chasing you, and you have to kind of clear your path as you take it out. One of my favorite levels in the game. Very cool. It's similar to other R-Type levels where you would have to navigate around the ship as the screen auto-scrolled and you take out different parts of a ship. It's kind of like one of those type of stages, but this is the coolest one of any of those type of stages, I think. It's very fucking cool. I like how you take out all these different parts of the robot. Now, I chose this specific black ship for a reason, because I like the lightning charge move that it has, which is great for clearing out enemies. It also do pretty good damage to enemies that take more hits, so it's a nice move to have at your disposal. You have your beam, which you can charge. You have different levels of charge you can do on the beam, and a fully charged beam will do the ultimate version of your charged move. Whatever your ship has as the ultimate version of the move, it varies depending on the ship. This one has a lightning spread kind of thing that arcs out all these lightning bolts and takes out smaller, weak enemies like that. I just did it real fast there. But you can also use your attachment as you always do in the R-Type series, you can fire off that attachment on the front of my ship right now, and you can fire it off and lock it into the bosses and do major damage to them. I believe that's another thing that this ship has, where the pod will actually lock on to the bosses and enemies. Some of them I don't think lock on. I think that varies with the ship as well. So ship choice is very important to your playstyle. So you should experiment with them and see what you like. But I love the whole pacing of the game and attaching your pod to enemies to take them out quicker. And you really get in a rhythm. As you can see, it gets really fucking dense. It's a tough game. It's not an easy game. You see how easily you die. Sometimes it's hard to see exactly what hits you. And you'll see that on some of these stages I'm showing here where it gets very dense. There's a lot of shit on screen. Now, if you're playing R-Type 3 on Super Nintendo, you can at least see what hits you, because of the sprites. It's cleaner. So that is one downside to them going with, earlier polygon graphics. Now, there's a new R-Type coming out soon, which that should be fucking awesome with 3D graphics because, now it's not an issue anymore. The 3D graphics are very clean now, obviously, but back then that wasn't the case. So you can attach the pod to the back of your ship as well and fire it from the back or the front. So you have a lot of varieties, how you can use it. You can use it to block, most projectiles as well. So if you have it on the back, you can block shots from the back. So there's a lot of strategy involved with, using the pod to take shit out. And, when you latch it onto an enemy to damage the enemy or boss, you're sacrificing being able to use it to block shots. So there's a trade-off there, and you have to make decisions based on, what's more effective for each scenario. But yeah, it does get very dense. Now, initially you don't have unlimited continues, but what I recommend doing is just set auto-fire on a controller for the X button and leave the game running at the title screen and have the controller constantly mash X and just leave it on for hours. If you're playing on an emulator like I did, just use fast forward to speed up the process. Set it to fast forward. And, have the controller mashing X on turbo or auto fire. Some emulators even have the option to set an auto fire button if you don't have a rapid fire controller. So just do that, leave it running for hours, and after a certain amount of time, I think it's over 6 hours of running time, you'll automatically get free play unlocked. Free play is just like it was in the older R-Type games. All the other R-Type games pretty much had unlimited continues, for the most part. So it's going to revert the game back to, unlimited continues like it should be, really. And at that point, then I would say work on the game, but I wouldn't waste your time working on it. I mean, it's not a waste of time, but you'll have a much more effective time if you just unlock free play from the start and then start working on the game. That way you can just make permanent progress, basically. You know what I mean? Like, you'll get to the next checkpoint. Now, it won't save, but if you're playing on an emulator, just save state, and next time you play, you can resume. So that's how I played it. And you'll always start from the last checkpoint you got to, so you'll never have to redo the stages from the beginning. So it's checkpoint to checkpoint, just like R-Type 3 was for Super Nintendo in a lot of the games, where if, you had unlimited continues, but if you wasted one of your infinite continues, you would just start at the last checkpoint you got to. You wouldn't have to redo the stage. Now, Super R-Type for Super Nintendo was different. I think that one had unlimited continues too, but it starts you at the beginning of the entire stage. So they do vary in that, where they start you from, but this game plays the best if you unlock free play from the start. So just leave it running for 6 hours or just fast forward or whatever and just do something else. And then when you go back to it, you should have free play unlocked. And that's really the best way to play the game. You're going to need to practice anyway, but it doesn't really matter. If you're playing checkpoint to checkpoint, you just need to beat one checkpoint at a time. So then you can just slowly kind of crawl and work your way through the game. You don't need to practice everything ahead of time because it's not like you're doing a no-death run or anything. You just want to beat the game. So I would just recommend getting free play unlocked from the start and just go from there. So yeah, see, it's very strategic how you can, Now this is a safe spot I found, and this is really exploiting the boss. Makes it super fucking easy. But most of the bosses don't have safe spots like this. But when they do, I would recommend taking advantage of it. And of course, I cover all that in the tutorial. But you can see latching on the pod onto the boss does massive damage, and if you find a safe spot here, you can just let the pod do all the work, pretty much, and just grind these bosses out. Now, aside from your charge move, you have a delta weapon, which When the circle in the bottom left fills up, your Delta weapon is fully charged. When it says, see where it says dose? When it goes up to 100%, it's fully charged. That means you can hit triangle and do a Delta attack, which does massive damage. It's great for bosses. It's usually good to save that for, hard sections or bosses where when you're about to get hit is the best time to use it. Now, if you do waste the Delta, luckily your Delta charge carries over on your consecutive lives. So, if you waste it eventually, even if you die a lot, you'll charge up the Delta again, and you'll be able to use it at the beginning of the checkpoint you're stuck on, or wherever you need to use it. It will recharge. So it does give you some mercy in that sense that you can charge up the Delta move again and have it ready for where you need it. But yeah, there's a real nice variety here of different environments, enemies, and situations. But yeah, the game is a very hard game. Definitely a very difficult game. But if you have beaten other R-Type games, or if you play these kind of games, then you'll know what to expect. But the game is also, it gives you infinite continues. So, if you do work on it enough, you can learn the sections and eventually beat it. I believe anyone can beat it. But it may take a while for some players. It's not going to be an easy game. What I could see being a brick wall for a lot of players is the final boss. Because on the final boss checkpoint, you don't get any power-ups, or you don't get any pods, I should say. I don't know if you get any power-ups on that checkpoint, but I remember having to do the final boss without any pods. So it was extremely difficult because you need pixel-precise movement through all these fucking sperm to basically beat it. And I'm going to show that full final boss fight at the end just to show what I'm talking about. So be aware that I am going to show that. I like to show the final bosses in these old games because I kind of believe that is part of the review, you know what I mean? It is part of the whole package. Maybe a small part, but to me the ending is kind of a impactful part of a game, when you're finishing off a game. It's cool to have a meaningful ending. I don't care about story and all that shit, but as far as, meaningful gameplay at the end, to kind of cap a game off is always cool. You feel satisfied, like you put your skill to the test. Now this part's easy, but, you'll see after this, the final boss is very, very difficult because you don't have any power-ups, or any really useful power-ups, I should say. I don't know if you get other power-ups, but you really don't have the kind of power-ups you would like having some pods and shit to shield yourself. You just have to maneuver perfectly. And you have these sperms that spawn right on top of your fucking ass. So it just took a lot of save and load state practice, very specific practice again and again to find a path through it, basically. And, once I found the path, then I would just do that. But I recommend using save and load states really to practice this game. At certain sections, you're going to want to practice specific parts. So yeah, now you get a little cutscene here. And this is the final boss. Now you'll see how ridiculous this gets. You got to dodge all these sperm for a long-ass time. So this is what I'm doing here. It's very, very precise, very specific. And I had to practice a lot to memorize, how to move through this. And I break it all down in the tutorial about how I practiced and what my technique was exactly, and what I was doing, There is kind of a rhythm to it and a technique to it. But it's a pain in the ass. But you see I have no pods here. So a lot of people had trouble beating this section with no pods. Even in my tutorial, I had someone mention that they thought this part might be impossible or something along those lines. And they were grateful that I showed it being completed without the pod, so it is beatable. It's just kind of ridiculous, you know what I mean? It's kind of shitty, like some of these games do, where they don't give you power-ups on the checkpoints. You know how these old games are if you play these kind of games. So the end is very punishing, but it is very rewarding once you complete the game. It's definitely a game that you feel satisfied for beating. Really a great game. And I would say it's one of the best shooters, of that whole time period, and still holds up great today. So I'm going to give this game an 8.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching.